Hi, everyone. I'm Etienne, and so far in this series, I've interviewed three amazing ladies about innovating in methods and writing. Having with me today, Professor Jane Lee. Thank you so much for being here, Jane. So this is a really innovative paper because it's definitely one of its kind, and it examines the process of methodological innovation and also identifies multiple ways that scholars can actually introduce and combine methods in really creative ways. So another thing that it does, which is really interesting, is that it highlights what is implicit in innovative research practices. So I'm really interested in how you got inspired to write this paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It actually came out of another piece of work that we were doing. So Torsten and I also did a piece for research methodology and strategy and management, where we outline 12 different designs in use. And in that piece, we basically noticed that while people are really gravitating to particular templates, like we see in the research method literature right now being debated and challenged, we also saw that there was a lot of creativity in terms of how people were using those methods. So it wasn't like every comparative case study is the same, every case study is the same. You know, there was lots of diversity, and we really thought, well, someone needs to notice and celebrate this remarkable creativity of methods. And so we really decided to look at the practice of what people do with innovative methods so that we understand how and with what effect they're really changing the way that we do research methods. And so that was the foundation of this paper, kind of gathering evidence for innovation and then trying to assemble it into kind of the process of how people actually innovate effectively in practice.
Fantastic. So I'm wondering, just on the backdrop of that, can you explain why you think it's really crucial to consider and also promote innovative research methods?
I mean, for me, this question is really straightforward. There's lots of good reasons to do it. And I think the first and probably the best reason is we want to answer lots of different research questions. And if we want to answer lots of different research questions, we need lots of different methods. And the more we move away from traditional questions, of course, the more we move away from traditional methodologies. So I think that's kind of the first point to make. I think the second point is that especially interpretive research methods have always been lauded for their adaptability, flexibility, responsiveness to field settings. And so to cast that away and take out the innovation, I think would be really detrimental. And last but not least, as someone who loves methods, I'll always tell you that methodological innovation is a source of novel theoretical contribution. So if you want to do really cool things, it sometimes involves doing things quite differently. And that's why I'm such an advocate for research methods.
Fantastic. So I'm wondering, are there certain kinds of skills that would be needed to embark on something like this, on method innovation? So two things: what are the skills you think would be required for method innovation? And also, what types of challenges do you think that one is likely to encounter when they decide to embark on a journey such as this?
I think that's a great question. So from my perspective, there's always two things you need to do innovation well. And the first thing is what we, in an earlier version of the paper, called technical mastery. So it basically means you need to know a bit about research methods, the particular tradition of method that you're using. And also you need to know about the specific tools and how they have been and can be used. So there's this kind of understanding of the heritage and the assumptions inherent in methods, so that when you innovate methods, you're not accidentally violating core norms, like, for example, doing a comparative case study and not at all talking about comparability between cases or not doing any comparison. Because if you do that kind of innovation, there will be lots of pushback. In the same way that certain traditions allow you to quantify and count the countable, and other traditions really would be offended by that kind of reductionism, you really need to know what tradition you're working in and what kind of innovation is conducive to what you're trying to do. So it's really about, know your genre, know where you're working. And I think that's important, but it's insufficient. So it's good to be good at methods. and to know methods. But I think the other part of it is really what we used to call creative crafting. So it's this notion of actually recognizing that you need certain adaptations. And when you're in the field or when you're analyzing data, you sometimes might need solutions that you can't find in the literature. And I think there's one piece I particularly like in the current paper that we talk about, which is Bernstein 2012, and they talk about this covert embedded participation and how it arose out of a needle in the field, which is basically they couldn't go work on a Chinese factory floor, you know, as kind of a white middle-aged person. That would have not been very conducive. And so there was an adaptation of process which cascaded through the whole process. So what I would say is, you know, be creative, know where the boundaries are, be willing to push them, but don't jump totally out of them. So don't just do random stuff, innovate with a purpose in mind. And that's the way I think these three principles that you alluded to earlier are really important. So when you innovate, be holistic, make sure you trace any innovation from research design all through your entire process. So you don't make innovations, I guess, partial innovations that may be less effective. Be really clear on what you've done and why you've done it for yourself and for others, so others can, you know, see that this is a rigorous and justifiable decision. And then last but not least, develop theory and methods together. So this is about remembering the end game and remembering that the method that you choose and the way you choose to adapt the method must still allow you to answer your research question. Now, in terms of challenges, I mean, I guess the biggest challenge would be discomfort. You know, we are taught how to do research in particular ways, and when we move outside of the norm, it's uncomfortable. And especially when you're adapting yourself, you know, maybe as a doctoral or early career researcher, like Julia talked about a couple of vlogs ago, it feels a little difficult. And so to push through that and, you know, engage with the novelty, I think is important. And also to be prepared to receive some feedback or pushback from the field and or reviewers. So, you know, Julia said, like, you know, her CEOs or senior executives, they were willing to do the diary. If you ask now, would they still do it? We don't know. They might want different technologies. So be prepared to have conversations around that at least. And in relation to reviewers, it's like anything. If we don't know it, you know, if we're not familiar with it, it's a little less comfortable. So give them explanation, give them justification, show them how you build the method and the effects it generates to avoid those kinds of challenges. But I would say also take on the challenge and enjoy the challenge, because when you take on those challenges is when we see real, meaningful, novel contributions. So I would say, yes, there are some challenges, but it's worth taking the risk.
Lovely, really inspiring. So for you, I'm really interested in what the key message it was, as in what's the key message for you in this particular paper?
So I think I touched on this a little bit already, but I think it's just to acknowledge and celebrate and encourage this incredible creativity that we have already in our, you know, qualitative research methods. And yes, there are templates you can draw on and find some comfort in, and you can do really great work, you know, relying at least in part on some of this, you know, trailblazers that have come before us. But also look at new, less established work. You know, Paula talking about her, you know, global team-based ethnography, or another paper that I really love that we draw on the paper, which is the study by LeBaron et al. In 2015. And if you ever heard Curtis LeBaron or, you know, Marlies Christiansen talk about this paper, the way that it evolved, and the kind of, you know, filming of doctors doing handovers and the way they analyze particular, you know, screenshots and motions over time. I mean, it's just incredibly fascinating. And so I guess I would just say there's so much novelty out there. Let's see it, let's celebrate it, engage with it, and take up some of those notions, not as templates, but as kind of inspirations in order to let us think more creatively about what research methods may look like and also what we can gain from them. you know, Paula's study allows you to come from, you know, local kind of trading practices to an understanding of an entire international market. I mean, that's crazy. I love that. You know, if you look at, you know, the LeBaron paper, you know, you can see these minute details in the handover, you know, really influencing almost life and death. I mean, you know, this is the kind of research we want, real creative, impactful research. So I would say that is the first thing, you know, celebrate and join this creative use of methods. The second thing is research tools are tools in use. And I'm drawing here on, you know, Paula and Sarah Kaplan's terminology of tools in use. And, you know, it's always an instantiation of a method. It's never by definition the same as any other instantiation of the method. So there will always be adaptation, whether you recognize it as innovation or not. So you'll always be doing some of this. So be comfortable with that. And then, of course, remember the principles, you know, be holistic, be clear, remember theory and method go hand in hand.
That's great. I'll try to remember every one of them because I want to be as innovative as you guys. So wondering, I said, we've talked about the past, about how you got inspired to innovate. We talked about the present in terms of the content of the paper, what you think are the key messages for you in the paper. And so I thought it was a good idea to touch on the future. So what you think would be most relevant for future innovators?
I mean, I think the most important thing is be courageous. Be courageous enough to go beyond templates. Don't just copy and paste someone's method and change a few variables, you know, but really be courageous, get in there, you know, and think about ways in which you can use methods more creatively. So really make use of the promise of qualitative research. The next thing is, you know, join the conversation, come to conferences, attend panels, you know, talk about your methods, you know, in terms of developing not just, you know, empirical theoretical contributions, but also research methods contributions. You know, right now, we're all interested in seeing how we can take the field forward. So join the conversation and show us the ways in which you're doing that. And then we can add voice and conversation and debate about how you might best do that. So do that. And then the other thing is, obviously, as always in method, you know, it's about transparency and authenticity. So be honest about what you've done and be clear in terms of how you did it so that it's really, you know, relatable and we can see the rigor in the process. And it's a credible way of doing research. And last but not least, another hobby horse of mine is research methods, teaching and training. And I really feel what we need to get to is a place where instead of talking about research methods and writing about research methods, we're showing people how to do research methods, giving them hands-on practice with real data, you know, doing analysis, you know, doing, you know, practice data collection and just getting their hands dirty so that even as novice researchers, they can feel that they can really capitalize on those opportunities to be creative in methods.
So this is the concluding part of our 4-part vlog series on innovative research practices. I hope that everyone who's watching has found them as fun and informative as I have. So thanks for watching and bye for now.